Hey there, Vernacular Faithful. Redcoat here. And today I'm going to be talking about the philosophy of play. Specifically, the idea that it's broken up into four different uh, interlocking elements that kind of cycle into each other. And the fact that you can actually, at any time, at any place, anywhere, in pretty much anything that you're doing, play can happen. It's just a matter of how you're approaching it and your own proclivities when it comes to the thing that you're doing. This is likely to be a longer form series where I actually go into each individual portion of play in detail. But to start, I'm just going to do a general overview. And the first bit of note is this initial concept. We pulled it from the book Man, Play, and Games. And in that book, they describe it as the four parts as competition, chance, vertigo, and mimicry. However, in my estimation and in my philosophical, let's say, dabblings, I have felt that there's better terms to more fully encompass what these terms are meant to do. So with competition, we're shifting that to recognition, and we're shifting that to recognition. With chance, we're shifting that to uncertainty. And with vertigo, we're shifting that to experience. And with mimicry, we're shifting that to adaptation. In each individual portion where I go into the subject in detail, I will explain why I've done that shift. But just knowing that the terms that I am going to use aren't actually the ones in that book. Rather, they're going to be the terms that I've applied: recognition, uncertainty, experience, and adaptation. Now, I will brusquely go over what each one of these is. So, firstly, we have the concept of recognition. So, this is the one that's in the place of competition. So, competition is essentially about overcoming an obstacle, overcoming some other person who is the obstacle to you. And there is a certain amount of pleasure that comes from that concept of, overcoming a person. And specifically, that pleasure is the recognition of the fact that you are good at a thing. So good, in fact, that you beat the other person. And this is where we come to that term, recognition, because in reality, there's more to play than just playing against someone else, because you can play by yourself. And the element of recognition is actually still there. However, it comes back to that idea that you are recognizing yourself. You are recognizing yourself. You don't need someone else to recognize you. And in overcoming any obstacle, that recognition can happen. And that understanding of who you are and that sort of thing, defining it a little bit more, there is some pleasure in that, but there's also some substance to that, something that enriches your life and also enriches the work that you're doing. So that's one element of play there. Then we have vertigo, which that's experience, rather. So experience is in the place of vertigo. Now, one of the things with vertigo is there's a lot of connotations with it, which is, moving really fast, high-flying action, adrenaline, all of that stuff. And while that is important, one of the things to recognize here is that it's not just all of those high-flying feelings that you can experience. There's also more subtle things in life, such as the feeling of, like even this right here. I am experiencing the feeling of moving my fingers across each other, drawing them across each other, and I mean it's one of the most desired feelings a human can have is to be touched by another human. But in addition to that, it's things like taste, things like feeling fabric, things like the when you imagine something, actually seeing it in your head, experiencing yourself seeing that thing in your head. Um, so experience, in essence, is about kind of the being present during a thing, such that you are actually pulling in all of that information, pulling in all of the information that is coming at you, and you're not missing any of it. And just the act of feeling certain things, the act of feeling things is pleasurable in of itself, and thus experience is an important part of play. Then we move down to uncertainty, which originally it was chance. And the reason why I shifted it away from the term of chance is a little bit reductive to what is actually going on. When you think of chance, you think of random number generators, you think of decks of cards, you think of rolling the dice. And while this is definitely a big part of it, and it is one of the things that really comes up when it comes to games, which is why I even dug into the concept of what play is in the first place, it's not all encompassing. Because one of the other things about the structure of a game is creating an uncertainty, not just where you don't know what's going to happen, but it's also an uncertainty about whether or not you can do something. And this is a key element. This is why novelty is so important with things where you bring something new, it's unfamiliar, and you're like, well, can I do this? And so there's a tension built up there, and the resolution of that tension is a big part of the pleasure of uncertainty, where it's the buildup of that tension, the resolution of that tension, and this feeds into another part, which I'll get to, which is the interconnectedness of all of these. But that's the main thing with uncertainty. It's not just rolling the dice or drawing a card, it's the perception of the fact that I'm not sure that I can do this, or I'm not sure if this will go the way that I think it will. So that's why I changed it from just chance to uncertainty, because there is a certain amount of there's more to it. So then finally we have adaptation, which in the original it was called mimicry. And admittedly, the mimicry term is a little bit more applicable, but I chose adaptation in part because mimicry is still reductive in that it's, you see a thing, do a thing, imitation. However, that's not the full aspect of play. I chose adaptation as the term because it's not just about looking at something and doing it in the same way that it was done. Rather, it's looking at something, seeing how it works, and then being like, how can I do that better? Or how can I make the way that it's done more like me? So adaptation isn't just about imitating something, because then most games will be rote, and we know that there's other ways to play. Snowboarders, skateboarders, and everything. A big part of their play is adaptation, and it's not everyone does the same kickflip, and new tricks are made all the time, and that comes from a person taking what was there and adding their own spin on it, or recognizing that there's something new that can be done. Aha, now we're coming to the cycle here. So these four parts are actually interconnected, where they kind of feed into each other. So, and this is actually very important to the construction of a game, where if you want a game that just kind of you can come back to on a regular basis, all four of these elements should be present in some way, shape, or fashion. But that's the thing. So, at the beginning, we actually, in contrast to how I actually started things, really one of the first things is that uncertainty element of the tension that builds up when you don't know whether or not you can do a thing. But the cathartic resolution of that uncertainty results in recognition, because suddenly you recognize I can or I can't do that thing. And there's a whole host of emotions that come along with that. Those emotions are experienced. You experience those emotions, you feel them. If you're present for them, you feel them in fullness. Um, and so there is another element there where even without the actual activity itself, which you would experience the activity itself just from uncertainty's resolution, we create an experience that can be felt. And again, we get that recognition of this is how I felt when that happened. And there's a certain amount of introspection that will come from that of why did I feel that way? Well, because I didn't meet the limit, but why did I feel that way because of that? There's a whole bunch of self-reflection that can come from their resolution of that. But also coming back to that uncertainty aspect, the way that you resolve that uncertainty is by adapting or attempting to adapt to whatever it is that's making you uncertain. And so the uncertainty creates a situation where you need to adapt. And so that adaptation, you have to first recognize what is going on. You see the thing that you're uncertain about, and then you start thinking, how can I do this differently? How can I surmount this uncertainty? How can I make this work? And after you've done the adaptation and you've attempted the thing, once again, we get a cathartic resolution where you recognize whether or not your adaptation was correct. So these four parts all actually fit together. And if any one of them is missing, the play won't be quite as fulfilling. Or to be more accurate, the play won't be quite as pleasurable. And this comes back to the main reason that we play. And it's very simple. Play is pleasurable. And in truth, anything can be play. The moment you start having fun when you're doing a thing is the moment you've started playing. When the moment you've stopped doing and you started playing, or rather, you started doing in a pleasurable manner, which is play. Now, with that said, turning doing into play, like I said, it's very simple. And this is where the overarching concept of game comes into play, which is the idea that a game, as I define it, is a series of rules that influence the achievement of a goal. And usually it's built with the intention of creating a positive engagement. Positive engagement being a interpretation of the word fun. It's one way to define the word of fun as positive engagement. And I can go into detail of what engagement even is, but that's a whole other can of worms. The important thing is that uh, the reason that you create a game is to make a task more fun, usually, or the other item is you create a game to have fun. You create a game to play. And usually it's either that there's already a task that exists that you want to make fun, or you just want to have fun and you found a task that you think will be fun and you apply a few rules to it to make it more engaging. Because at the end of the day, um, the way that the rules interact with the goal is ultimately to make it more interesting. Because you start out with a goal, let's say, running to the bus stop, or get to the bus stop. We'll even cut out running. Just get to the bus stop. So there's no corralling element. You can get there in whatever time you want. You can walk, you can run. It's it's not very interesting per se. If we add a time limit, a rule, you must get to the bus stop in 15 minutes. This suddenly changes a few things, particularly if normally you get to the bus stop in 20 minutes. So now you have to increase your pace. You also have to consider your route. You also have to consider the weather conditions and how much that will slow you down. And these suddenly you have some things to think about. Suddenly you have to adapt to this new rule. And you have uncertainty about whether or not that you're going to actually get to the bus stop in that period of 15 minutes. And when you get to the bus stop, those two tensions are resolved, and you recognize, I was capable of doing that. Yes. Or, wow, I guess I can't actually do that. Not with the way that I've been doing it. And with that resolution, all throughout this, the actual act of getting to the bus stop, you experience yourself getting there. Now, what's interesting is with the adaptation, with the adaptive part of it, different people would have different solutions. Like one person would be like, well, clearly I run fast enough. I can just run and get there in that 15 minutes. I can cut those 5 minutes off real quick. Someone else would be like, well, the path that I usually take is really winding. So instead of doing this S curve, I'm going to figure out how to just go the way of the crow and make a straight line to get there. And then another person would be like, I've got a scooter. I've got an electric powered scooter. I'm just going to ride that. I'm going to learn how to ride my electric powered scooter, and we're just going to ride that to the bus stop. Each one of these is a different person, and each person would have a different recognition about who they are from this game. Like the person who runs, they'd either recognize, wow, I'm really fast. I actually cut that down by 5 minutes. I cut that down by 5 minutes. Or they recognize, like, maybe I should approach this in a smarter way. Maybe I should think a little bit more about this. And the person who came up with a different route, like, I've been inefficient this entire time. Or if they came up with a route and it didn't work, they're like, wow, that's actually a really long distance that I've been traveling. I wonder, maybe my route is incorrect. Maybe my very thought about going the way of crow is incorrect. Because it's possible that they created a straightforward route, but they have to go over a mountain and over a tree and over a house and all this other stuff. And then finally, that person who got the scooter is like, wow, that was easy. It wasn't very challenging, but it was fun to ride my scooter. Or if even with the scooter it took a really long time, perhaps the scooter required them to take that winding road that person B had to do. No, there you go. And notice all of this has been happening in the locus of one person. You add another person to the equation, and suddenly that concept of recognition starts just compounding on itself, where someone else recognizes you as being smart, and you recognize their idea as good or bad, and then you have the experience of being recognized by another person. Like it all comes together. Not to mention the very fact of adapting to someone else, adapting to playing with someone else, or coming to an agreement with them. That in of itself is an element of adaptation. And then there's uncertainty when you've got another person there and you don't know what's going on in their brain. Like there's adding another person to play almost exponentially increases all of the other aspects that can be impacted there. So To wrap it up, play is built of 4 parts, which is recognition, adaptation, uncertainty, and experience. And recognition is seeing and understanding what has come to pass, and also seeing and understanding the implications of what has come to pass with regards to yourself and with regards to other people. Experience is the actual act of doing and feeling it feeling it in yourself, feeling the emotions, feeling the sensations of doing the thing. And then we have uncertainty, which is just not knowing whether or not something could come to pass, and the tension that is built up and resolved as we work through that understanding of what could happen and what actually happens. And finally, adaptation, which is specifically understanding the task at hand and changing what you're doing, how you're doing it, or your conception of what's happening to make it possible to do the thing. Whether or not you're successful or not, it's about the act of changing how you approach it. And that's play. And the point of play, of course, is to have fun. These four things in of themselves can create a pleasurable sense. And when you put them all together, they feed into each other and just continually make an increasingly fun experience. So that's all I have for you today. I will go into detail on each individual aspect in future talks, and I suspect those talks will be shorter because they're just smaller, more compact. But thank you for taking the time to hear me talk. This has been Redcoat. Play the games you want to play, boyos.